Welcome to Yield Nerd, an educational show about how you can acquire and manage yield. All right, folks, we are on episode 81, and I kind of like the story behind this episode. In a way, the tail is wagging the dog. We'll talk more about it and more. And before we do any of that, just want to welcome our new subscribers. As you can tell, we're adding about one a day. And by the time I'm about 80 years old, we will reach 10,000 subscribers. So, hey, that's a good thing. Disclaimers. Hey, this is not tax advice. This is not investment advice. I am not a wealth management advisor. What I definitely am not as well is I am not one with an agenda. I'm not here to pump up one thing, pump another thing down. I do not endorse products, politics. I don't have t-shirts to sell. All right, let's see what today's episode is all about. And the first part, like we always do, we're going to do a little bit of a background of how we got to where we are. And then we're going to start analyzing what's happening in Treasury yields. Hint, hint, something interesting. And we're going to look at the yield Superbowl and see if there are any new winners. And you decide whether there are or there are not. I'll share what I see. And then a 4-week strategy and an 8-week strategy. So let's look at the background. Chairman Powell has indicated that the inflation fight is on. 2% is 2%. It is not 2.5 or 3%. And the Fed will keep hiking until we reach 2%. And if they don't hike, they will at least keep it at a high level to bring inflation down. And all indications are that things are getting better, but they are not where they ought to be. And what it clearly means is that we are probably going to stay at a high interest rate for longer. And so for people like me who like the short-term treasuries, this is a good deal. I will keep them longer. But there are some tremors that send smoke signals, and we'll talk about what they are. The market talks about this alleged soft landing, but I don't see it that way. Having said that, let's look at a couple of things that are coming up. We talked about this shutdown that may or may not happen, and the White House has officially asked Congress for, hey, we're going to run out of money by September 30th. Would you please, could you please, sugar on the top, give us some short-term relief. If you have discussions, then you can have them. But we got to keep the government open. And if it shuts down, it is your fault, opposition party. And the opposition party says, well, there is no reason to shut down the Congress. As a matter of fact, we would like to have short-term funding measures because a shutdown hurts the American public. And this is the part where you say, oh my goodness, we have good news. Looks like politicians agree that shutdowns are not good and they're going to work together. And then, bad news, your knee may not hurt, but you might have a heart attack. Because here is what the opposition party is saying. We kind of need to use some leverage here, and that leverage is what we are going to use to go after the Senate. So the way I read it is the shutdown may not happen by September 30th, but there is one coming. All right. Speaking of other things that are also coming, let's look at Treasury yields and see where it goes. And there are some remarkable things happening here. Let me explain what I mean. This is just the Treasury yield, not tax adjusted, meaning this is before the tax credit. So in the 3-month, and when you look at the 3 months, 6 months ago, you used to get south of 4.7%. Now you can get a very hefty 5.5 plus percent state tax free, which is closer to 6% pre-state tax. And as you can see, the curve is still inverted. But I want to point out something. The top end is getting congested. Let me explain what I mean by that. The dark blue is September, and that is kind of sitting on top of August, which is kind of sitting on top of others. In other words, the longer term is actually not moving a lot. If anything, and here's the interesting part, this is where I think the market is trying to tell the Fed something. In other words, the tail is wagging the dog. It's happening ever so slightly. Until about the 1-year mark, the latest yields are higher than prior yields, which points towards the inverted yield curve. But you can see very, very small tremors happening, meaning longer term yields are falling down. What does that tell you? It means people are starting to extend duration. There is more demand in the longer term because people are wondering, oh my goodness, I think the Fed is going to drop rates, or I think there is going to be a recession. Maybe I should start buying some longer term yields. And as more people move towards buying longer term bonds, then yields will fall down. As you can tell, the 10-year used to be 4.4, 4.3, 4.2. Now it is barely 4.1. So that is sending me a signal. It is sending me a signal that, hey, increase your duration or you may lose these kinds of fantastic deals. And I'll tell you what I'm going to do, and you decide what you want to do. And before I do anything with respect to changing my portfolio, I always go back to play Yield Superbowl. I'm not going to run through what Yield Superbowl is. You can watch some of the prior episodes. We compare for the same duration every single fixed income instrument. And if you are joining and starting this episode the very first time, you may want to go back and watch some of the prior episodes with the title Yield Superbowl to understand how we set up the data, how we tax adjust, and so on. But here are the results. And the results show that in under 9 months, treasuries are still king, and we are approaching the magical 6% with the state tax credit. And once you cross 6%, it is agencies all the way. But we're starting to see some munis and some corporates coming up. But you sit there and go, wait a second, is that a corporate that actually has a yield that is pretty close to an agency bond at 18 months? And then you go, munis north of 5%? What is going on? And so this is the part where at least before I change my portfolio composition, I sit here and go, well, if I can lock up a muni at a really decent interest rate, and munis, if you may remember, are not my favorite because even with federal tax adjustment, the yields were never comparable. And even now, if you want to buy a 3-year instrument, according to this, munis still aren't as good. Treasuries are terrible. Agencies are the best in the current scenario. But my curiosity has been piqued. Why are corporates all of a sudden showing up with very high yields? And so I'm going to start investigating. And I look through the corporates, bank, 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 not for profit. And you sit there and go, well, do I want to own bank, bonds? And hey, you do you. Who am I to tell you whether you should or you should not? And then you look at what is the par value and what is the, current price. Toronto Dominion is trading above par, and you know that if you buy anything above par, here is the yield to maturity, and the yield to worst is even worse than that. If you buy anything above par and they call the bond, you will be in trouble. You will lose it. And then you go, wait a second, then maybe I should buy these, which are trading extremely below par. Read the news about what it says about Credit Suisse. You make your own decision. This pays a coupon of 1.25%, and that is the reason why it is trading very, very cheap. So let me put it this way. I am not jumping to buy any of these corporate bonds, even though the yield to maturity may be high at the 18-month time frame. I still, given a choice, would probably go to agency bonds if you remember how the previous page looked. Then you sit there and go, what is happening to the munis? Is there anything interesting going on in munis where I'm not buying things at a premium, I'm not buying things at a huge discount? What's going on with those munis? Who's coming up for air? And you look at the munis and you see right away that the coupons are 5%, and that alone should tell you a story. If the muni coupons are 5%, that's actually pretty good for 3 years, except every single one of these munis is trading above par. If a muni is trading above par, it better be a non-callable muni. Ding, ding, ding. Here is the suspense. Every single one of the muni is callable. Let's explain what that really means. If you thought, whoa, look at this, I have a municipality, this is Austin, Texas, and that's a great city. That city is not going to go under anytime soon. Let me lock in that 5%, and you pay $1.69 above par. And who knows what is going to happen in the next 2-ish years. If interest rates do drop and Austin can find new money at 3%, they're not going to keep this 5% bond out. They will call that bond, and you will lose $1.69. Guess what your yield to worst is? Your yield to worst will be down to 3%. That is the real problem. Munis do indeed offer some attractive yields now, even on a tax-adjusted basis. However, you can't buy them at par, and the yield to worst is terrible. So, sorry, not my cup of tea. But if I can find a non-callable muni that pays 5%, you might tempt me. Try me. Okay, so where does that leave me for the next 4 weeks? My next steps, I might change my assortment. I'm going to react to the tail wagging the dog a little bit. I might move some of my proceeds into the 18-month and 2-year treasuries because I'm worried that rates may change over the next 3 months, 6 months, and I want to lock in the 2-year treasuries at 4+%. Agency bonds look fantastic at 3 years. They pay north of 6%, and that is before the state tax credit, as long as it is an FHLB or an FFCB. And I am still, unfortunately, a believer that the parties in power and the opposition party cannot get along. So they are going to cause a ruckus towards the end of the year. So I'm going to sit on cash towards the end of the year and see if I can buy good equities right around that time. Couple of quick pointers. My returns are still chugging along. My last 90 days show a 6.64% increase. That is a lie. That is because, when you cut off the last 6 months, you come towards the end of the debt ceiling debate. And I had moved a couple of percentage points into cash just in case, the banks didn't function. I didn't know. And so this is artificially showing that I made these amazing decisions, which I did not. And so this money was always in my account. So if you take that out, I'll be closer to 3.6%, 4%, something like that. I am predominantly fixed income. 15% is equity. I don't buy the hot stocks. I only buy defensive stocks, at least at this time. My strategy is to preserve my capital and produce income. So what does that lead me to do? 63% of my fixed income portfolio is treasuries, 22% agencies. I have some duds that I bought 3-4 years ago before Yield Nerd. And so Yield Nerd, this project has taught me a lot. I'm still sitting on those. I'm not going to sell them at a loss. I'm just going to let them mature. My duration across all these bonds is 168 days, which is still shy of 6 months. So as you can tell, more than half of my bonds are really short term. When it comes to treasuries, the dog eats its own dog food. I am positioning to have a lot of cash towards the end of the year. The median duration of my treasuries is just 82 days, and my pre-tax yield is 6%. You do you. If you have any questions, comments, feel free to email me. Thank you for watching Yield Nerd. Thank you for listening to Yield Nerd, a do-it-yourself show for yield accumulation and management.